16. Setup. Lectern, confidence monitor, note cards, or gulp, nothing? The physical setup of your talk really matters. Compare setup A, a speaker standing on a podium behind a big, bulky lectern reading from a script to a somewhat distant audience, with setup B, a speaker standing unprotected on a small stage, surrounded on three sides by an audience. Both are called public speaking, but they're actually very different activities. Setup B can seem terrifying. You stand there, vulnerable, with no laptop, no script, your whole body visible, nowhere to hide, painfully aware of all the eyes staring at you from not very far away. Setup A has evolved over the years to accommodate every speaker need. Before electricity, a speaker might have had a small lectern on which to place some notes. But over the 20th century, lecterns, or podiums, got bigger and bigger to accommodate a light for the script, buttons to advance slides, and, more recently, a laptop. There was even a theory that by blocking out most of the speaker's body so you could only see her face, you were boosting her authority, perhaps by unconscious association with a preacher in a pulpit. Whether deliberate or unintentional, the effect of larger lecterns has been to create a huge visual barrier between speaker and audience. From a speaker's point of view, this can be very comfortable. What's not to like? All you need for your talk is right there at your fingertips. And you feel personally secure. The fact that you forgot to shine your shoes or that your shirt is a little wrinkled just doesn't matter. No one can see that. Do you have awkward body language or bad posture? No problem. The lectern hides that too. Pretty much all that's visible is your face. Phew, and hurrah. But from the audience's point of view, there's a big loss here. We spent a whole chapter talking about the importance of making a connection between audience and speaker. And a significant part of that is driven by the speaker's willingness to be vulnerable. It's an unspoken but powerful interaction. If a speaker lets down his guard, so does the audience. If a speaker stays distant and safe, the audience will too. TED's co-founder Richard Saul Wurman was adamant on this point. No podiums, no lecterns, no reading of speeches. He disliked anything that turned the relationship between audience and speaker into something formal. That included the wearing of ties, which he banned outright. When one speaker, Nicholas Negroponte, demurred and showed up in a suit and tie, Richard strode on stage with a pair of scissors and cut off the tie. That stance is one of the reasons why TED conferences felt different from what people were used to. Speakers were forced to be vulnerable, and audiences responded. If you can get comfortable with it, a talk given in front of an audience with no lectern in the way is the best approach. The vast majority of TED Talks are like this, and we encourage everyone to give it a try. But there are trade-offs, and in today's TED, we've concluded that there are multiple ways to give a talk, both for variety's sake and to meet the needs of a given speaker. It's good for speakers to push the edge of their comfort zone, but as I described earlier, you can also go too far. I learned from Daniel Kahneman and others that letting someone speak in a setup that makes him feel confident and allows him to most naturally find the words he needs matters even more than maximizing vulnerability. So the purpose of this chapter is to help you understand the full set of trade-offs and then find the speaking mode that is best for you. The key first question: in order to give your talk effectively, how many notes will you need to refer to? If you have it memorized completely, or you can deliver it from a short, handwritten set of bullet points, the choice is simple. Go out on stage and give the talk direct, human to humans. No lectern, nothing in the way, just you, a single handheld note card, and the audience. In many ways, this is the gold standard to aim for. It's your best chance at building a powerful connection with your listeners, building on your perceived vulnerability. But not everyone can get comfortable with this approach, and perhaps not every talk justifies the time it takes to do well in this situation. So, if you think you need a lot more notes, or even a full script, what then? Here's a list of possibilities that offer progressively more support, but some are much better than others. Comfort Backup. In this mode, before going on stage, you place a full set of notes or even a script on a table or lectern at the side or back of the stage, along with a bottle of water. You then seek to deliver the talk from the front of the stage as above, knowing that if you get stuck, you can move to your notes, take a sip of water, and continue. From an audience point of view, this is completely natural and non-problematic. By having the notes at a distance from you, you'll avoid the temptation of looking down at every instance, and chances are good that you will get through the talk without even having to use them. But it takes away a lot of pressure just to know they're there. Slides as guides. Many speakers use their slides as memory nudges. We've discussed this briefly earlier in the book. What you mustn't do, of course, is to use PowerPoint as a full outline of your talk and deliver a series of text-crammed slides. That's awful. But if you have elegant images to accompany every key step of your talk, this approach can work very well, provided that you've thought about each transition. The images act as terrific memory nudges, though you may still need to carry a card with additional notes. Handheld note cards. Maybe you have too much to fit on a single card. You want to remind yourself what the transition is to each slide, the key examples that go under each main bullet point, or the exact phrasing of your closing. In that case, the best bet may be to use a set of handheld 5x8-inch cards, which you simply page through one by one. It's best to have them on a ring clip in case you drop them and they get out of sequence. These cards are unobtrusive, but they allow you to easily check where you are in your talk. The only downside is if you rarely need to refer to them and then have to page through 5 or 6 to catch up with your next point. An alternative is a clipboard or full-size sheets of paper. They require fewer page turns, but overall seem more intrusive. Cards are probably better, and if your talk relies a lot on visuals, a good approach is one card per slide that includes the transition text to the following slide. All this being said, it's still important to know your talk pretty well, so you're not constantly looking down. Many TED speakers use note cards. You may not see them on screen, but that's partly because our editors have done a good job disguising them, and partly because most speakers use them only as occasional support. The power of this approach is that it frees you to walk the stage unencumbered, while still carrying with you all you need in terms of keeping the talk on track. Smartphone or tablet. Some speakers have taken to using smart devices as a high-tech replacement for note cards. Instead of multiple cards, they figure they can simply scroll through their talk. This approach can certainly grant someone freedom from the lectern, but I'm not crazy about it. For one thing, when someone's looking at a screen, we unconsciously associate that with their being disconnected from us. All that texting is to blame. In addition, there are many things that can slow this down. A single accidental touch on the screen can take you away from your script, and it may take a lot of scrolling and peering to find your place. Perhaps someone will come up with a perfect app to fix this, but so far, as used in real-world conditions, the solution seems slower and clumsier than old-fashioned note cards. It's fine to have your script on an iPad and to use it as a comfort backup, but I don't recommend using a smart device for notes you regularly refer to. Confidence monitors. Many higher-end speaking venues will have a couple of confidence monitors in your field of vision, either angled up from the floor of the stage, or perhaps at the back of the room above the audience. The main purpose of these is to allow you to see that your slide has advanced without your having to constantly turn around. But they can also be used to display, for your eyes only, notes you've added to a slide and/or the next slide due up, so that you can be ready. PowerPoint and Keynote both support this feature with Presenter View. There are obvious advantages here. If you've structured your talk to have one slide per topic, you can use confidence monitors to keep yourself comfortably on track. But there are also significant traps you can fall into. Sometimes speakers look at the wrong monitor, confuse the next and current slide screens, and panic that the wrong slide is showing. But much worse is the tendency to become too dependent on the notes on these screens and to be constantly referring to them. This is actually more off-putting than a speaker looking down at notes. Unless the confidence monitors have been placed right in the middle of the audience, you can clearly see when a speaker is looking at the screens. Either their eyes are constantly dropping to the stage floor, or they're lifting above the heads of the audience. It can become deeply off-putting, the very opposite of the sought-after eye contact that builds recognition. Besides, there's something familiar and comfortable about a speaker occasionally referring to notes. The notes are right there, and everyone can see what he's doing. It's no problem. But when his eyes move to a confidence monitor, it can quickly become distancing. You may not notice it early in a talk, but as it continues to happen, you, as an audience member, start to feel a little awkward. It's a bit like the uncanny valley I referred to earlier. Things are almost right, but not quite, and the gap feels weird. This can get really bad when a speaker tries to read an entire speech from confidence monitors. The first 2 minutes of the talk are great, but then it starts to dawn on people that they're being read to, and somehow the life is then sucked from the talk. We had a distressing instance of this at TED a decade ago, when a sports celebrity came to give a talk and persuaded us he needed the full text of the speech on screens at the back of the room. The words he spoke were perfectly fine, but you could track his eyes reading 3 feet above everyone's heads, and it killed the talk's impact stone dead. The only speaker I've ever seen read effectively off confidence monitors is the singer Bono. He's a natural performer, and he managed to read out of the edge of his field of vision while maintaining lots of eye contact with the audience, a natural tone of voice, and pleasant injections of humor. But even then, people who noticed that the words of the speech, including the jokes, were right there on the monitors at the back of the hall, were disappointed. They wanted Bono's mind live there with them. A written speech could have been emailed to them. Our strong recommendation for use of confidence monitors is use them only to show your slides, the same slides the audience is seeing. If you must add notes, use as few as possible, and with just 2 or 3 word bullet points. And then practice giving the talk with the absolute minimum number of glances at those monitors. No reading. That's the only way to stay warmly connected to the audience. Teleprompter or auto cue. If confidence monitors are dangerous, a teleprompter is even more so. On the face of it, it's a brilliant invention. It places the words on a glass screen invisible to the audience, but right in the speaker's line of sight. So a speaker can read a speech while also maintaining constant eye contact with the audience. But its ingenuity is also its Achilles heel. If you use one of these, you're in danger of communicating to the audience, "I'm pretending to look at you, but actually I'm reading." And the mixed signals from that can be damaging. You might object, this can't be right. President Obama, one of the finest speakers of our era, regularly uses a teleprompter. Indeed. And it has a divisive effect on audiences. Those disposed to trust and like him ignore it and embrace the talk in full as his authentic way of speaking to them. But his political opponents have gleefully used the teleprompter against him, mocking him for not being able to speak openly to live audiences. As a result, media strategist Fred Davis believes the teleprompter has been ruined for all politicians. He told the Washington Post, "It's a negative because it's a sign of inauthenticity. It's a sign that you can't speak on your own 2 feet. It's a sign that you have handlers behind you telling you what to say." At TED, we're reluctant to make hard and fast rules these days, but we always discourage the use of teleprompters on the main stage. Today's audiences would rather have a speaker do his best job with memory, notes, and in-the-moment thinking than do a perfect job that mixes reading with fake eye contact. So what do you do if you need a full script of your talk, but you can't read it off confidence monitors or a teleprompter for fear of seeming inauthentic? Here's our suggestion. Unobtrusive lectern. If you must refer to a full script, lengthy notes, a laptop, or a tablet, don't fake it. Just go back to putting them on a lectern. But at least see if the event organizer can provide a cool, modern, unobtrusive lectern, one that is transparent, or has a thin stem as opposed to a heavy wooden one that screens out your entire body. Then commit to knowing the talk really well so that you can spend lots of time looking out at the audience instead of down at the lectern. For Monica Lewinsky's talk, this proved the perfect solution. For her, the stakes were too great to risk memorizing the entire thing. In rehearsal, she tried referring to her notes from confidence monitors, but we really didn't think that approach was working. She kept looking out above the audience's heads, and it broke their connection with her. Happily, Monica came up with something we'd never tried at TED before, but which worked perfectly. She propped her notes on a music stand. If you watch her talk, you'll see that it doesn't remove her from the audience one bit. In fact, she rarely looks down at it, but it gave her all the confidence she needed to truly shine. Why does this work better than confidence monitors or a teleprompter? Because there's no ambiguity about what's happening. It's honest and familiar. The audience can enjoy the fact that you're clearly making an effort not to read the speech, looking around, making eye contact, smiling, and being natural. And if this makes you more comfortable and confident, people will hear that in your voice and will relax with you. So, those are your main choices. You can, of course, always invent something unique to you. Clifford Stoll had 5 bullet points for his talk and wrote 1 on each finger and his thumb. Every time he changed topic, the camera would zoom in to a close-up of his hand, and we'd get his view of what was next. It was quirky and endearing. What matters is that you find the talk mode that works for you. Commit to it early, and practice it as best you can, using the exact same props that you'll be using on stage. That, by the way, is another ding against too much dependency on confidence monitors. You can never be 100% sure that the onstage setup is the same as what you've rehearsed with. In short, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's also okay to find your place of comfort and confidence. And it's essential to be authentic.